Uh, with nothing else under club visits fair, it gives me great pleasure to introduce someone who's no stranger to our club. Tonight he's bailed us out big time, so I think next time I see him, I'm a drink. But Craig has actually spoken to us a couple of times before about Andy's Man Club over the last couple of years. He's helped out at a couple of our club events as well. And I know that when I've given my mental health talk about the Don't Bottle Up campaign to clubs, not just here in the UK, but around the world, I've been plugging Andy's Man Club left, right, and centre. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Craig to our meeting tonight to hear how they've been coping since he last spoke to us, in particular over the last 7 months. So, Craig, the floor is yours, mate.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I think I do recall being at Borrington the week before we actually went into lockdown. So it's kind of the time we were sort of saying, "Oh, we'll be all right. We'll crack on with our clubs," and then suddenly 2 days later, it was everyone stop what we're doing. Yeah. So as Darren said, I am part of Andy's Man Club. We're a UK national charity. I'll share my screen in a moment with a few information about what we do. We started out. The club itself started out 4 years ago up in Halifax in Yorkshire after the sudden death by suicide of a young lad called Andy Roberts, who was 23 years old at the time. His family, brother-in-law, set up what is now Andy's Man Club on the back of that to sort of support men going through not only mental health issues, but any sort of issues in their life. So I will just try, fingers crossed, to share my screen and hopefully you can see it. Just go with that. So I'm hoping that you can see my presentation on screen. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So Andy's Man Club, we have 28 groups across England, Scotland and Wales, from as far south as Plymouth all the way up to Perth in Scotland. 4 groups in Devon itself. So the original group in Devon was Newton Abbot, and on the back of that, Plymouth, Exeter and Torbay have all branched from that Newton Abbot club. We're open to any man over the age of 18. Every Monday we meet. There's no booking in, no charges, no waiting list for men to attend. And prior to lockdown, we were having around 900 men a week attend our clubs across the UK. 26,000 men attended an Andy's Man Club in 2019. And Plymouth itself opened in May 2019, and between then and March 2020, we had almost 1,000 men attend the Plymouth group itself. So the reason I got started with Andy's Man Club was that a couple of years ago I moved down to Plymouth. As you can probably tell from the accent, I'm not originally from Plymouth. Moved down to Plymouth for work and for a new life at that time. And within 6 months, my life had bottomed out. My marriage had ended. I found myself in a city where every bit of support I had was linked to my ex-partner. Found myself in a situation where I knew about the Andy's Man Club in Newton Abbot, and if it wasn't for going to that club, I don't think I'd be here today. To be honest with you, this club has genuinely saved my life, and has saved many men's lives that I've known over the last couple of years. Clubs, as I said, every Monday we meet at 7 o'clock, and we're a talking group of men, all peer-to-peer, so there's no professional feel to it. We talk about whatever's going on in that man's life. We have a set number of questions each week, and we're just there to support each other. We can go from somebody crying their eyes out one moment to laughing by the end of the night, the way the group is structured. So those lovely faces that you see on screen are some of the facilitators from the 28 clubs. Got you guys there with their kilts on. Every man in that picture has at one point or another has walked through the door as a member of an Andy's Man Club and are now running a club. So myself, I walked through the door 2 years ago to Newton Abbot, and within a year I was then running the Plymouth club and supporting men in Plymouth. Last year, Andy's Man Club were lucky enough. I mean, what we do is for the men that come along, but we were lucky enough to be awarded a National Diversity Award for the work we've been doing. And this time last year, obviously this year was put off with COVID. We actually ran a UK tour to coincide with World Suicide Prevention Day. One bus going north to Scotland, one bus coming down to Plymouth. The picture at the bottom was the bus arriving in Plymouth 2 hours behind schedule on the Saturday night, and we still had about 20 people there to greet the bus. Absolutely blown away by the turnout. Obviously, as Darren sort of alluded to, 2020 has been a difficult year for everyone, and no more for us. The start of the year, we were lucky enough to be on Sky News. So there's Luke and one of the facilitators talking on Sky News about what Andy's Man Club does. But since March, since lockdown, we've adapted our meetings. We've still been running them virtually via Google Meet. And we've been lucky enough in the last couple of weeks. Plymouth itself has run 2 face-to-face meetings the last 2 weeks. So we're back now in a position where we can actually run face-to-face meetings, meeting all the guidelines, totally secure, but actually getting our guys back in a room where, as much as it's been great to see the guys on a video screen every week, it doesn't replicate that feeling of being in a room and sitting in a circle with guys that are really struggling. Even though, as I said, we are a suicide prevention charity, there's no requirement for a man who turns up to actually be struggling with their mental health. They could just be going through a relationship breakup, going through a tough time at work. It can be any reason. The only requirement is that they are aged over 18 for safeguarding and reasons like that. But apart from that, they can come along for any reason. That's any issue that's on their mind is absolutely valid. So if anyone has any questions, more than happy to answer any questions. If anyone wants to know where the clubs are, the website, Andy's Man Club website, will give a description of all 28 clubs and where they're currently based.
One thing I'd like to ask Craig is, have you noticed a distinct increase over the last few weeks, etc., since you've started sort of meeting again as such?
We haven't, and the only reason that is because to make sure that we are compliant with all the guidelines, we have initially only opened up to existing members only. For example, we've moved to a new venue in Plymouth, so our previous venue at Swarthmore on Mutley Plain, we're not in a position where they could support our reopening. So we've managed to sort a new venue with unfortunately a lot of the venues, our one included, will probably have a capacity limit of how many men they can have in that group. So allowing us to sort of manage that capacity has only been by opening it up initially to existing members.
Craig, if you can stop screen sharing, then hopefully we can see us first. So, okay, Brian, you've got a question there, and you're on mute. Brian, you're muted.
Maxine tries to do that to me all the time, so it's okay. Andy, you said age over 18. Is that a particular issue, or would you like to reduce it? Would you like to increase it, or is there a particular hang up there somewhere?
I mean, no, we have men attend who are 18. We've had men attend who are in their 70s and 80s. So there's no requirement. Any reason it's 18 plus is because it's just for safeguarding reasons. So we have no sign-in sheet, so we don't necessarily know the guys that are going to attend.
Thank you.
So things like that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to put that measure in place.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sarah.
I have a question. I wondered how you dealt with confidentiality, Craig. Are people just known on first name terms, and is some kind of understanding about what's said in the room stays in the room, that kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly that. So what is said in the room stays in the room. Guys who come along don't have to give their name. They don't have to write any details down. Don't have to. At the moment, we've had to adapt that to allow us to reopen. So at the moment, the guys have to provide a name and email address for track and trace. But previously, there was no requirement for names. The guy could say his name was Bob, and his name could be something completely different. And what he said in the room stays in the room. There's no. The only things we don't talk about in group are politics and religion. and medication. Medication, just because we're not trained to talk about that, and what may work for me may not work for someone else. And politics and religion, as you can probably imagine, are quite divisive subjects.
And what about referring people on to counselling or advising people to get more counselling? Do you have any?
We're more than happy to signpost. Some of the guys will sort of say, "Well, I've tried this. I'll give you their details after club."
Okay.
But a lot of it is all sort of offering solutions rather than giving advice as a sort of peer-to-peer support.
Second thing is, I totally get why it's Andy's Man Club and why women aren't there. But is there anything that the fairer sex can do to help support your clubs?
Funny you should say that, because off the back of the Newton Abbot Andy's Man Club, the guys there were sort of bombarded with requests to set up a women's version, which they have, Women's Wellbeing Club. There's a few groups, there's about 10 groups around the UK, and they're actually run by the partners of the men who run the Andy's Man Clubs.
Nice.
And they use the same questions the Andy's Man Club guys use. When we do talks like this, we get asked, like, is the talk only for men? Is men only allowed? Actually, we get a lot of guys come along because they say, my sister saw your leaflet, my wife saw your leaflet. It's just sort of signposting to what we do. Every club has their own, as well as the main Andy's Man Club website and Facebook page. Every individual club has their own social media as well. So we have an Andy's Man Club Plymouth page, and we post a lot of stuff that's happening in specifically to our club on that page.
No, as I say, I mean, I take my hat off to you guys. I think what you're doing is absolutely amazing, and I see the statistics, so I know just how important it is that you're out there making it easier for men to talk about their feelings, because unfortunately there's still a huge amount of stigma attached to that. And the sooner that is broken down, the better, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, thank you very much.
That's okay, no problem, thank you.
Dominica and then Brian.
Yes, I was wondering how you're funded. Do you get help from the government, or is it just charitable donations or something? Because I'm thinking about overheads, like presumably you have to pay rent for some of your meeting places and so on and so forth. So how do you get funding? Yeah,
first question, last one first. All of our venues that we have, all 28 venues, are offered free of charge to us. So every club has that community relationship with their venue. They offer their space free of charge. For example, the Halifax club is run at the football club in Halifax, and they normally charge, I think, £150 an hour to use the room, and they've offered that every week to the charity for free. We get a lot of donations. Unfortunately, we get a lot of donations from families who have been impacted by suicide. So we get a lot of stuff like that. We do a lot of fundraising, and everything that we raise. So, for example, if Plymouth there's a fundraising event, everything that we raise gets collated centrally. So it's all kept in one space, and we get grants. The guys, every person apart from 2 members of staff, out of the 4, every person who works for Andy's Man Club is a volunteer. So I'm a volunteer. I do it in my own time. There's only two paid members of staff, and their salaries are paid for by grants that the charity receives. Every single penny that we get gets put back into the charity for leaflets, merchandise, everything like that, to promote what we do.
Okay. Brian?
Thank you, Darren. Craig, I think we're all very aware of what you do and what you have done. What has been the feeling since COVID's come in? Because if we read the national press, or hear the national press, we can say, oh, it's up and up and up and up and up and up. But what really is the situation? I can understand we all live in a virtual society now. We don't have chance to sit down and contemplate our next move. We have to make that move very quickly. So how do you feel this is going to go in the future? Mental health is a big problem, because I think, we say, yeah, fine, work from home, it's great. But you sit in your own isolation, and you don't have the chance to communicate, and there's no camaraderie with communicating at home. So what's your aspect on that at this this current time?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a massive impact. I mean, our guys, thankfully, as 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 much as it helped, and it wasn't the same as a face-to-face meeting, the online massively helped. I think if we'd have had no form of contact with the guys for 6, 7 months, it would have made some of the guys really in a worse place than they are at the moment.
Yeah.
Outside, I mean, I'll be honest, I work in a school, so I've worked from home from March until sort of August, September time, and I'm back now in the school, which has got its own challenges at the moment. But apart from that, I mean, I would quite easily say at the moment I'm in a quite a good headspace, and it affected even me working from home every day, not seeing people. I would have to go out and go for a walk each morning to sort of just get some fresh air.
Yeah.
Outside of group, we also have a private messenger group chat for the guys who attend groups. So actually, even though we meet on a Monday evening, they've still got that contact during the week. They can still reach out if they're really struggling. And as us as facilitators, we have a link into the main facilitator team. So we at a Monday night we can come out a group and actually somebody's spoken about something that's hit us really hard, and we've got that way to get that off our chest as well. I mean, as facilitators, the questions we ask as part of the session, we also answer them. So we don't just sort of say, this is the question, here you go, you answer it. We also answer that and we get stuff off our chest, which is great for us as well, even as facilitators.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Craig, one thing I'd just like to sort of throw your way, it's a sort of slightly left field type question, but when I've been given my talks on the Don't Bother Up campaign to clubs around the world, I think you touched upon it earlier on. It's like trying to break down the stigma, certainly with guys, because certainly when we've chatted before in the past, I've always thought it was very much a sort of a very British thing, sort of things, certainly with guys, the British stiff upper lip sort of thing. Guys don't talk about things. But certainly in giving talks to other clubs, and certainly like Dominica's club in Montego Bay, it's brought it to me that really that sort of British stiff upper lip, it's actually a worldwide thing. It's not just us Brits who like it. To be honest, yeah. guys all around the world are exactly the same. As I've mentioned to you earlier on, when I've given the talk, I've sort of highlighted Andy's Man Club as a sort of a example of what can be done to help guys. Do you know, or I know it's sort of cultural differences, but do you reckon there's scope to sort of try and make Andy's Man Club sort of an international thing to try and get the sort of the mythology that you guys use on a Monday night to see if it could be used in a wider area rather than just the UK?
Yeah, it's certainly something that the charity have been sort of really high on, expanding groups. Obviously, COVID's put a dampener to that. I mean, we get messages all the time from Barnstaple's one that we get messages from all the time. Why is there a group not in North Devon? The charity are always looking to make new groups. The only problem with it's not really a problem. The only thing that we face is that we could easily open 100 groups tomorrow because there's need for it and there's places that would need it. What we wouldn't want to then happen is to open 100 groups and within 2 months 50 of those are closed. They have to be sustainable really to keep that going. So for example, Plymouth, Torbay and Exeter all grew off the back of Newton Abbot, because there's guys that went to Newton Abbot that live in Exeter. I lived in Plymouth. I was then in a position where I could open up the Plymouth group and take that there. So we'd probably be able to find a venue in somewhere like Barnstaple, but it would be finding someone that could run that group every Monday, because it is, as rewarding as it obviously is a commitment that you sort of have to make everyone. We've got a fantastic team of 8 facilitators in Plymouth. So even if, for example, I'm not there, there's another 7 facilitators that can fill in, know all the process and what to go through. But it's certainly something that we want to branch out across the UK. The only possible hindrance I could probably see to more worldwide would be all of our groups run at the same time, and the reason behind that is that it's so they based it on the truck driver analogy. So if someone is living in Plymouth but driving around the UK and then suddenly finds themselves in Hull on a Monday night, they can go to the Hull group and it would run exactly the same. How that would work, obviously, with time zones would be something they would look into. But it wouldn't be a challenge, I don't think, for the charity to sort out.
That's cool. Cool. Okay, Tara, I think you've got a question there.
I have indeed. Thank you, Darren. Craig, I'm from the old school.
Yep.
I'm 81, and when I was a young man, if anything I had on my mind, I was told, "Oh, get on with it and pull yourself together." That doesn't seem the trend these days in modern times. Is it with your participants that it is a soul-bearing aspect, where you meet and you bear your soul basically to other people of what's on your mind? Or is it looking for some stimulus to help you to get up off the floor attitude?
It can be both. I mean, I walked through the door because I was on my backside with F. I think I walked through the door 24 hours after my marriage had ended. So I was completely rock bottom. I remember sitting in my office at school. Thankfully, it was a training day at school, so all the teachers were busy. And I sat in my office most of the day sobbing my heart out because mob was just so raw. And I was hoping that no one would walk into my office and see me upset, because immediately they would know that I wasn't right. And there's only a couple of people in school that know that's how bad I was. I vividly remember driving across the big bridge in Bristol, the big bridge where you can sort of see the car, I don't know what it is, you can see the river, and vividly thinking to myself, I could just drive off the bridge, that all the pain would go away. And thankfully I didn't, because I'm now in a place where I've got a new partner. I've just bought my own house 2 years later, so I'm now in a position where my life's completely changed around. And I was actually asked a few weeks ago I did a video with Luke, who started the charity, and he said, if you had your own life and you could look down and see now how your life's turned out, look at how much difference has made in sort of 2 years. But yeah, I mean, we have guys come along who have bottled up stuff for so long that when you ask them, I mean, the first question we ask every week is, how's your week been? And when you see a guy say, just burst into tears because finally they've got a space where they can actually talk, the fact that we all, a lot of the time, we start the group and some of the guys are strangers, it's strangely powerful that you could sit in a group full of strangers and talk about what's going on, but not talk to your friends and family because you don't want to burden your friends and family. I walked in and thought, well, I'm never going to see these people again. What have I got to lose? And just having that space where you can actually talk about whatever it is, you can talk for, we have guys that talk for 2 minutes. We have guys that talk for half an hour because they've got so much to get out. And you actually see the physical relief of some guys. I've seen guys that are 6'5" and built like a brick outhouse, and they just burst into tears, and you just see the physical relief of actually being able to talk because they've kept it in. I mean, the guys in Yorkshire say it's the old chin up, chest out mentality, sort of everything's fine, because they feel they have to take on everyone else's problems and not tackle their own. End of the day, everyone is human. Everyone's got the same. A man or a woman's got the same emotional feelings. There's no difference. We may be built differently biologically, but mentally we're all the same.
Agreed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions at all? Brian?
Yeah, I think this is why Rotary was set up in the first place, actually, to help the individual. And what you've said now is being a glorification of what we do in everyday life. I just hope that you can have a link into Rotary, because, you know, well-being wasn't really a terminology until about, 6 months, 9 months ago, when suddenly we were all forced into isolation and we were all forced to work at home. And suddenly people said, this great. This is lovely. I enjoy this very much. This is fantastic. God, I don't have to go out in the mornings. I don't. And then suddenly you realize there's no camaraderie about the whole situation. We're all now living in a virtual world. I can speak to you now, but really, in all honesty, I don't care what the hell you think now or how you feel tonight. And you don't care how I feel either. We're just in a false sense of security. And I think if Darren, Clinton and Clubbing can enforce some sort of uniformity about the whole situation, then that's got to be a well-being for the world in general. Because honestly, if we go down this path forever, we're not going to get anywhere at all. And although we may say, yeah, we can ride this storm, we can ride that storm, but in 6 months' time, bring it back to now. If we can ride Christmas without seeing our grandchildren, without seeing our relatives and things like that, that's okay, fine. But when it comes to 6 months' time, birthdays, anniversaries, and then we come to 12 months' time, and we haven't seen our grandchildren for 12 months, that's when it's going to really hit the fan, as it in the proverbial. So I think what you're doing is great, Craig, but I think Rotary in general has to look at a far bigger concept of the whole problem. And polio, I'm going on now, sorry, but polio is one of our biggest things, but it shouldn't be, because we are looking at local people having local problems, having local situations which we have to address. Sorry, fine.
That's fine, Brian. I'll pick up on a couple of those things in a minute, but I know Corinne's got her hand up. So last question to Corinne, and then when I'll do this in a second, I'll come back to you in a second, Brian. But Corinne?
Well, actually, probably wasn't so much a question, more a comment, Brian, because I'm always really passionate about the International Suicide Prevention Day, which is the 10th of September. And last year, the statistics for the UK, so just to show this was an increasing problem pre-COVID. I think COVID's just made it a lot worse. But pre-COVID, in 2019, the statistics showed that we were at our highest rate of completed suicides since 2002. They were on the rise. And we now record suicides for people aged between 10 and 24. So 10-year-olds, as far as I'm concerned, they're children. And yet they are completing suicide. So it is a massive problem. It's still one of the biggest killers of men over the age of 40, which is why the Campaign Against Living Miserably runs its Project 84. And I think we also ought to be aware, I mean, I know we're talking about Andy's Man Club tonight, but 1 in 5 people have suicidal thoughts in their lifetime. And actually, more women attempt suicide than men. But it's just that men sadly complete more often. And just to put it in perspective, this week, literally Tuesday night, my son and I had to make 999 calls because his girlfriend attempted suicide on Tuesday night. So I've actually lived and breathed my work this week. So I can't stress to you how important mental health and talking about mental health and putting that in place for people is. And although suicide is the worst of it, because of what I do, I know people who've had their anxiety dramatically affected, their depression dramatically affected, have had eating disorders resurface when they've been under control for 10 years. There's a whole variety of things. I'm supporting a friend at the moment whose father's at end of life care. Father's in Scotland, she's down here in Cornwall. He's only allowed 1 family visitor, so she cannot, her father is dying and she cannot go and say goodbye to him.
It's tragic.
And that's what everyone's living through.
Tragic.
Let alone when you then also marry that with the increase in domestic abuse. So 2 women a week normally lose their lives through domestic abuse. That's risen to 1 every 36 hours during COVID. So there's a whole wave of things heading our way when it comes to mental health. And I don't think it should be underestimated.
No, I mean, like you say, the statistics around men, it's one man every 2 hours in the UK that sadly takes their own life. And like you said, the women attempt more often. I think from my experience, men, It's much more of an impulsive moment. I've got a friend who runs the Newton Abbot group, and he said that he vividly remembers getting on his motorbike to leave work and suddenly just driving down the A38 at 120 miles an hour, hoping that the bike would flip. And he just doesn't remember. It was just an impulsive. It wasn't planned. It was just an impulsive moment. But what we do every single week, hopefully, is reducing that, giving the guys that early intervention, how to talk before it becomes something more serious. So
absolutely, and it's, as I say, it's why I take my hat off to you, because you literally, and you might not. I mean, I know you've spoken about your own personal circumstances, Craig, but so many times you don't realise until later on the impact that you had. And sometimes people don't share. They don't share that conversation was the one that turned it around. It just was, and that's the other thing. You'll never really know how many people you've helped, because people don't always share the impact.
True.
I mean, thankfully, one of our guys, a facilitator, he's openly said that if we did an event at Plymouth Parkway Football Club, we just had a table there with some leaflets, and he saw our banner, and he said that if he hadn't seen that banner on that day, he would have taken his own life that night.
Yes.
And he came along on that Monday from seeing our banner. It's just I mean,
serious.
I mean, sadly, it does absolutely kill us that we can't save everyone, but ultimately, we're never going to be in a position where we can.
Never.
But we can save the guys. We can save the guys that come along and come to our groups.
Right. Well, Craig, time's going on. I want to say a massive great thank you to yourself for stepping at short notice to help us out here tonight.
No problem.
Giving a very emotive talk. I know Brian was touching on saying just now about how Rotary could do more. It's part of the reason why, certainly in our district, we started the Don't Bottle Up campaign, Rotarians for Mental Health Initiative. In the last 6 months, I've actually joined the Rotary Action Group for Mental Health Initiatives, and I know that Tam, who is with us tonight, she's a member of the Action Group as well. We had an open meeting last Saturday afternoon, UK time. Around the world, Rotarians are starting to take a greater interest in mental health issues, and I know there are a number of projects taking place around the world to try and address issues. Like Craig was saying just a second ago, we can't help everyone, but the way I see it, and when I've given the Don't Bottle Up talk, if we can break down that stigma, and if we can just help just one person, that's the result. I know realistically, hopefully we'll help a load more than that. We can't help everyone, but if we can make a difference, we will. I think it's great that Rotary is really starting to take a active pursuit in this. Craig, I know we've built up some good relationships already with yourselves between Princeton Rotary and Andy's Man Club. Long may that continue, mate. Mental health is one of my issues, my sort of campaigns this year. So on behalf of the club, thank you ever so much for speaking to us tonight. And if we could all show our appreciation in the usual manner, please. Okay, folks, we've still got a bit of time left in the meeting. It's at some of the evening where we go to the virtual